Evening, Jim. Did you? It's got.
Oh.
Long time no see. Good to see us. Hey, are you guys on the level?
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Call to order the regular meeting of the Rio Dell City Council. Roll call, please. Mayor Barnes? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Here.
Councilmember Carter? Here. Councilmember Wilson?
Here.
Councilmember Woodall? Excused. Okay. We stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ceremonial matters. Proclamation and recognition of National American Indian Heritage Month. City manager, do you want to do this?
No, what's that?
And Virginia Mullen. I'm gonna read this to you. Okay. Proclamation and recognition of National American Indian Heritage Month. Whereas the history and culture of our great nation has been significantly influenced by American Indians and indigenous peoples, and whereas the contributions of American Indians have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas the time has come to stop suppressing the memories of crimes committed against American Indians by the seizing and occupying of their land, and whereas their customs and traditions, which were once repressed but are now respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States. And whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976 and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Indian Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as cultural, artistic, educational, and historical activities have been planned throughout the nation. Now, therefore, we, the City Council of Rio Dell, do hereby proclaim November 2022 as National American Indian Heritage Month in the city, and urge all of our citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Dated is 18th day of October, 2022. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Public presentations. This is the time for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with the council or staff is not allowed under the Ralph L. Brown Act. Items requiring council actions not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda consideration if the council directs, unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the council?
Hello, Sharon Wolf, 3 Painter Street. Earlier today, I saw a press release from Senator McGuire's office about the Redwood Trail project. They're having a meeting next week, and it sounds really interesting. It's a really great project. When I was looking at the map, though, and don't ask my husband about my map reading abilities, but when I was looking at the map, it looked like it circumvents Rio Dell. It comes back to 101 just past Chapman's, where the rivers come in. And I'm sure there's all kinds of reasons on why they located it where they did. But what I'm hoping that the city can do, if they aren't already, is very loudly and vocally advocate for intertie back to Rio Dell off of Highway 101. Just so that we don't have to take our life in our hands, going that distance to connect with that trail system. That would be a great thing for Rio Dell. I think it's going to be a big boon to the area if they can get that done. And I would really hate to see it circumvent Rio Dell when we're not able to join in, safer than riding alongside, Highway 101 with the trucks and the cars.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. I will reach out directly. I was anticipating we should have been on the map, so I will definitely make that an issue. Is there anyone else who would like to say anything, or are there any hands raised? Any emails?
No emails.
Okay. Then we will close public presentation and move on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? What? No. No, no hands raised. Then is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
There's a second.
Oh, sorry.
And a motion and a second.
Still fine.
I tested and it worked.
Right time.
Am I pushing the wrong one? That's good, yeah.
There we go. I did a test.
Oh, when I no, came up yet.
I hit no.
Okay.
It worked.
I pressed yes and it's.
Try now. And Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, so then that, and I need to, I'm sorry, I didn't say this right at the beginning. We have pulled the property maintenance regulations item from the agenda tonight. So we will bring that back in November. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Have a good evening. No, don't worry. Okay. So we will move on to the update from the city manager on regional organic processing and Humboldt Waste Management Authority, and authorizing the city manager to sign a letter on page 26 in our agenda.
Whatever. Did we not have anything for the chat on the community or what our staff is doing or something?
Oh, no, there was no staff.
What's that?
All right, if you want to hold item H, I have a couple items I can verbally
Oh,
report out. There is no written report for tonight.
okay, there was no, yeah. Great.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. So staff will be meeting with PG&E on October 24th to go over their written response to both the county, city of Rio Dell, and city of Fortuna. They will then also be making a presentation before the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, November 1st. So I want to encourage anybody interested in that particular subject to attend that particular board meeting. Tomorrow's nuisance advisory committee has been canceled. So don't think we're going to be able to make a quorum for tomorrow's meeting. However, on Thursday at 3 p.m., we will have a traffic committee meeting here in the council chambers. And then I will just advise the council that there's a high probability that our November 1st council meeting will be canceled. So just FYI, if there is something urgent that needs to be on that agenda, we will hold that meeting. And then I will also just remind anybody listening in that November 8th is the midterm elections, or the main elections for this period. So that's Tuesday, November 8th, and that the city does have a measure out on this particular ballot, Measure O. And with that, I will return it back to the mayor and see if there's any questions of staff.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember.
Just a comment on the traffic committee. Do the work requirements moment. I won't be able to make that one. Well, that's lower. Well, after the next month, I hopefully retired. So that shouldn't be an issue going forward. And then you said possibly our November 1st meetings. I heard you right.
It's looking that one.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public that would like to ask a question to staff? No? Any hands raised? Email? And we will close that item. And now we will move on to the updating city manager on regional organic processing and Humboldt Waste Management Authority, and authorizing city manager to sign a letter. Page 26 in our agenda. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. So on the next page, page 27, is an attached letter. The letter is a letter of interest from the city of Rio Dell to the Humboldt Waste Management Authority, indicating our interest in a regional capacity for organics processing. So that is the action item on tonight's agenda, and I will now backtrack a little bit to provide some context. The organics legislation, known as SB 1383, is quickly approaching implementation. In fact, parts of it have already required implementation. In our discussions with our neighboring jurisdictions, there has been a strong interest in regionalizing the effort to tackle this particular problem and ultimately create an in-county organics processing facility as opposed to trucking material out of the county. And again, SB 1383 is really the short-lived Climate Pollutants Reduction Act. We want to try to keep as much organic material out of the landfills as possible, because that organic material in a landfill setting eventually creates methane gas, which is 36 times more damaging to the climate than just through the regular open air process of things dissolving. So the question in this overall context has been who's going to lead the charge on regionalization. And so really the Humboldt Waste Management Authority is the organization that really should be in that position. However, it's not currently. And so there needs to be some fundamental changes and kind of setting the clock back a little bit to kind of take care of these fundamental cornerstones of putting Humboldt Waste Management Authority into the position to lead a regional organics processing effort. And so if HWMA leads that charge, it will need some changes to occur in order to make that happen. So that's going to involve flow control over source separated material and other items that, in order to create a financeable plan, HWMA needs commitments and in order to make those long-term calculations about capital outlay and those sorts of things, staffing, in order to meet those state mandates. So HWMA needs to engage in some changes. Currently, the authority really, was founded to focus specifically on solid waste. Okay. And so over the course of the past couple decades, we've seen new requirements in recycling and source reduction, and now organics. So this is kind of a newer or the latest component of these requirements. And so in order to meet this, again, the authority has to engage in some potential changes. So some of those changes would involve and are contained in the letter on page 27. So that's adjusting the JPA and our own individual city and county franchise agreements related to materials flow. So that's kind of where the destination of that material ends up. And then also signal formally that the city of Rio Dell is interested in the regionalization effort. So this has all been kind of verbal commitments and whatnot. So these really represent the fundamental cornerstones towards building something better in the future that's compliant with state law. And then also to encourage other local agencies to join the authority. So Humboldt Waste Management Authority does not have participants from every single jurisdiction in the county of Humboldt. So Fortuna and Trinidad are the two cities that are not members of HWMA. So there have been some attempts to figure out how to finance and move forward on some interim solutions, trucking material out of the county for the time being. And unfortunately, even that cannot be accomplished at this time because the fees that everyone pays for garbage service really are kind of outlined for solid waste and recycling services and collection effort. And there's significant capital outlay that would need to occur in order to even update some of the facilities like the Eureka Recycling Center to handle that type of material. So fundamentally what the letter is stating, this would be a policy position of the City Council of the City of Rio Dell, is that the city is interested in organics processing in a regional capacity, that the City of Rio Dell is willing to look at adjusting the JPA, so the Joint Powers Authority, to expand it from a solid waste processing facility into an organization that has a broader scope in terms of dealing with organics, and that we're willing to investigate our own franchise agreements and flow control measures in that regard. And then that we would just encourage that all local agencies join the authority. And so that is about the quickest summary that I can give. It is a very complex subject that involves a lot of situations and developments that have taken decades to get to where it is today. But one thing I do want to remind the council that is that non-compliance with SB 1383 is not an option. However, and there's fees and fines associated with non-compliance. However, for the city of Rio Dell in SB 1383, there were waivers incorporated into the language of that legislation that allowed Rio Dell to apply for a waiver for most of the 1383 requirements and most of those fines. And so, so Rio Dell is actually relatively in a good position for there to be these delays in terms of getting some of these basic issues aligned and getting the authority into gear to tackle these issues. So I want to just remind the public of that, the council of that we do have some waivers, but we do want to work together regionally with our partner cities and the county to really tackle this, because that's the most efficient scale of dealing with this, is not individually but collectively trying to address the organics mandates from the state of California. So I'm happy happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, I wanted to make a couple comments being on the HWA board as a representative to Rio Dell for several years now. I've literally sat through hours of presentations on 1383, and it doesn't seem to have, or it hasn't in the past, have the seemingly the important emphasis put on it to how important it is to get this working. And it's a definite that to have HWMA be the central agency, that's the best opportunity that we have. None of the cities up here are, I think, capable of doing this by themselves. The county might, if it was forced into a situation, might be able to do it, but it would be tough. All the things that the city manager has gone over with expense, and then implementing it is still a major thing. The HWMA, and we paid a part of a cost sharing fee to have a study done by Edgar and Associates, which is a think group or a consulting group that has done a lot of stuff with 1383 and other environmental things. And they issued a report to us. You can go find it online at the HWMA website. It's 350 plus pages of what they call the roadmap going forward. And in the last meeting, we approved that roadmap to be sent out to the agencies. As we are coming to a new place, I think at HWMA, they changed directors, and then there was a director hired to go in there that we hired, and to say this in a hopefully a legal diplomatic manner, that manager, the executive director, is no longer with HWMA, which was a unanimous decision by the board of HWMA. The individual that's in the interim direct position was the operations manager, and he's doing an outstanding job. Jill Duffy, the former executive director, has come back as a interim operations director to allow the other gentleman to step up and pursue this. And this is a big part. The consulting agency actually had information for this roadmap to be presented to the board, and they were not allowed to present it. This was all in a public meeting. It was not presented to the board. And so we became aware of several things in the last meeting, a week ago, Thursday, it was last Thursday. And so we're kind of addressing some of this. And one of the decisions of the board was to have this letter along with to investigate reopening the recycling center that was closed, not at the advice of the controlling company, but it was shut down to replace and make that a pre-processing center, which just to get the trucks, the process is well, probably 2 years out to get the trucks because of air quality commitments and the type of trucks. And so there's a big dormant facility sitting there that collected recycling materials for the northern end of the county. And it's just a big 4-bay empty structure at this point that HWMA was going to have to go out and replace at the cost of probably $3 or $4 million, along with $3 or $4 million to implement the pre-sorting of this organic waste. And so that financing, which was supposed to have been secured, was not done. So that's where city manager is referring. There's a big cost that at least $4 million probably for the organic side that all the agencies that are going to participate are going to have to participate. So what I'm saying here is being said in council meetings, I'm sure across the county and probably in the county, probably be on their agenda as well, that this is something that everybody's going to have to address. And letter is a big step, showing that the commitment is there so that they have source material to put into the recycling community, and then they also have control of being able to move it, to get it out of your house and out of your normal garbage and into the landfill, to get it into to have full control to get it into the sorting process. So, it's a complicated deal, but anyway, I'll shut up and, just definitely voice my opinion, and in fact, that I even make a motion that we sign this, and, I'll give it back to the mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor Grimes. And certainly it's in the best interest of all the cities and the county to recognize what we're recognizing here tonight, because if solid waste or organics has to be hauled out of the county, it would be just crippling. I mean, it would raise the price of a ton up to basically the price of getting rid of garbage, which is a huge number. And so it's really in the best interest of all the cities and the county to come together quickly and get HWMA to be really full service. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. I also support, I think, a regional approach to this is going to be really important. I also just wanted to thank Councilmember Wilson for keeping us updated on this from the very beginning. I think you've done a really good job of explaining some of the ins and outs and how this works. And I'm just really thankful that you've done that. So thank you. And that's it.
All right, thank you. And I too am on board thinking this is a really important and a good idea for us to send this letter. And I do appreciate Councilmember Wilson for your updates. Because you're the ones there having to sit through all the meetings and the hours listening. And so we appreciate your short summations on it very much. Are there any questions from the public?
Well, I thought I had questions coming up, but now after that update, my question is, are we back to square one? Essentially, I'm trying to figure out what the county approach is going forward. And then part of what I wanted to ask too, it's been a while since I've been here to meet with to discuss this, but the last update I remember is we're working with the other larger cities that have to implement sooner than Rio Dell. And as part of that, we were having to look at implementing mandatory service and those kinds of things that Rio Dell would be required to do as part of this. So in consideration of that update, where are we at and what can the people expect as far as that discussion goes? Or are we really back to square one and we need to figure this out again?
Are you addressing me or?
You're sitting in the meetings or Kyle or whoever can give that update.
Kyle listens to the meetings too, and he is part of the local task force. So which of us do you want to answer him quick?
I'm happy to, jump in. Regarding mandatory collection, I'm hoping that we can have an update before the end of the year on that with our franchise hauler ecology, Eel River. Really the pace setter on that is Fortuna. And so, so as they, develop their plan, the council would then have the opportunity to look at it and decide if that's in the best interest of the community or not. And then are we back to square one? I wouldn't say that entirely, but we're pretty close. So as Councilmember Wilson noted, there was a roadmap that was developed. A good portion of that roadmap is highly valuable and useful and relevant. But there are just some real cornerstones that probably should have been addressed many years ago. And really in regards to HWMA's mission, and it's not even, I'm really talking about even over the past 10 years. expanding the scope of that authority to manage these issues on behalf of the member agencies. So on the consent calendar, for example, is some of the compliance reporting agreements that the city of Rio Dell has with HWMA to do some of the annual reporting on behalf of the city. And so there's kind of this mission creep that happens agreement by agreement and so on and so forth. But really the main structure of HWMA really needs to be updated. And now, this is the perfect time. It's better to do it now than later. And certainly it probably should have been investigated, a very long time ago. But we're at where we're at. And so what is the best path forward is putting these pieces of the puzzle together and seeing if we can truly create a regional approach that involves all of the agencies in the county of Humboldt with responsibility for waste services. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the best.
How long is our waiver good for?
5 years. So, but the state can come in and change the laws and the rules all the time. They do it all the time. And so it's just like with, and if Mayor will indulge me for a second. A lot of these utility rates, garbage service rates are really driven by state regulation that the city has to meet. So whether that's water services and, specific standards for water quality that are then monitored and enforced, whether that's wastewater. They make those mandates, and that it's up to the city to, best figure out how to do that and then collect revenue in order to accomplish those state-based goals. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Are there any hands raised or emails? Okay, then I will ask for a motion to approve the signing of the letter to the HWMA.
I would make a motion that we send a letter to HWMA. And make that recommended is also mayor needs to sign it.
Yes, the mayor signing the letter. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, I see, Councilman Ricard is a thumb. That motion carries 4-0. Now we will move on to our final item, discussion and possible action on the state of the city road infrastructure, the city manager.
all right. Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. This item should be a little bit more fun. If you go to the very last page of the packet, so on page 29, it is a thin packet this evening. You will see the draft pavement condition index update report. That Nichols Consulting is working on with HCOG, the Humboldt County Association of Governments. So every few years they come in and do an analysis on road infrastructure. And so just like with statistics, they will come in and do a sample of random city streets and then extrapolate from that where the condition is. And so historically, if you look at the graph in the middle of page 29, and I apologize, it has a bunch of markup comments on it. But you can see that this is the draft pavement condition index stretching back through 2009. So the PCI is a range that goes from 0, so no road, to 100, which is brand new, perfect road. And historically, Rio Dell has, since 2009, was rated at a PCI index of 61. So you'll see at the top on the far left, 2009 bar graph, there's an asterisk there, and that's because that's when they did the sampling data. So at that point in time, they determined Rio Dell had a pavement condition index of 61. Then the last study before the current one was done in 2017. They found that the pavement condition index at Rio Dell had declined to 51. And I believe that was, if not the worst pavement condition index rating countywide. It was maybe tied with the county. And now in 2022, the most recent one was done, a sample was done in, I believe, July of this year. And that pavement condition index rating is 71. And so the initial draft now indicates that actually Rio Dell is on the top tier of where the pavement condition index throughout the county. Obviously, there's still a handful of roads that are in extremely terrible shape. Give them maybe a 10 on the PCI rating, but that overall the network has significantly improved. It certainly would show an upward trajectory. And of course, in 2017, that's really when the council was initiating road projects and focusing in on bringing roads to the top priority. And so every year since, we've had some pretty significant projects related to road infrastructure. So I wanted to just crow a little bit about that. However, as I said earlier, there's still a long ways to go in our road infrastructure. This is certainly an item that we can bring back up, but it's also an opportunity to maybe look at a strategy regarding those handful of roads. So we're talking about Ogle, Elm, 2nd Avenue, obviously, maybe a couple other streets that really need a pretty thorough reworking. And whether or not we change the focus of the city's infrastructure, 5-year infrastructure plan to address those streets. So before, when we were working on the 5-year streets plan with the council, we obviously have a lot of streets to work on. And so there had to be a level of prioritization to the road network to kind of whittle down the list and get some projects delivered. One of the ways to whittle down that list was to identify streets where we knew that there would be a certain level of underground work that would need to be done, primarily on water, but also wastewater. And so I think virtually every single one of those streets at this point, whether it's 2nd Avenue, Elm, Ogle, all have some issues to work on underground. However, this is an opportunity for the council to potentially reconsider that direction and see if we can work into a plan to work on those streets prior to that work being done. So in other words, the paving would be prioritized, and as we needed to dig up the roadway to work on water or wastewater issues, we would do that. Anyway, something to consider for the council if you would like to move in that direction or not. But I think that pretty much sums up staff's presentation on that, but I'm happy to answer any questions about whether that direction should be reconsidered moving forward.
Thank you, City Manager. Normally I go last, but I'm going to speak up first this time. It's one of the things that I'm hoping that we can address. I was definitely one of the people that are like, why would you pave a road that you're going to just have to tear up? But our water superintendent has spoken a couple meetings ago and said that, that could that's one of those things where you can put off and so it never gets done. And that leads to frustration from citizens they just want a decent road. And what Randy said made sense. And so I am really in favor of having the staff bring back something to the council that says, let's just fix the roads. And when we get to the point of fixing the infrastructure, having the funds to fix the infrastructure or a grant to fix the infrastructure, then we just have to go back and, I don't know, perhaps we can it can be done in a very narrow line, just the line. You don't have to destroy the whole road, much like, PG&E has done since it seems like every time that a road is fixed, PG&E comes in and it's like, oh, we forgot we needed to do this. And then they come in and they make some kind of adjustment in their underground situation. So I think that from the perspective of our citizens who just want a decent road, perhaps we should look at that, have staff bring back something that says, let's fix what we can and then deal with it with the infrastructure part when that comes up, because it does seem kind of somewhat unfair to people having to, drive down bad roads, fix their cars, have issues, can't ride a bike down the street, waiting for something in the future that we cannot say this is when it's going to happen. So that's my opinion of the situation. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor Gines. First of all, I think the city needs to celebrate that we were last and now we're first. And this is huge. And this speaks to the commitment that this council and this staff has to invest wisely into infrastructure, into the streets. And several years ago, the citizens passed the measure J that provided a 1% sales tax increase in Rio Dell. And at that time, we promised that it's going to be spent on streets, police department, and economic development. And this council has fulfilled that wish, that mandate. That said, after we get done celebrating, we still have a lot of work to do. And we have a lot of work to do underground. And some of that work can be done, can be programmed, should be programmed in the near future. And as a couple examples, I would say we have storm drainage that needs to be improved on Ogle and Riverside. And the sum of those two improvements is probably in the range of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And that's the equivalent of what we've been investing into the street paving program for the last several years. So I would like, or I would suggest that we look at a program for next year of doing some underground work on those streets. We've got some design work done for Ogle. I don't know how close we are to going to contract, but I think we need to sit down and discuss with staff where we stand on that. Thank you very much. Mayor Gines.
Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. I've also heard from quite a few citizens, just complaints and frustrations about the pavement. I guess I would default to Randy. Like, I don't want to create a headache for city staff by paving stuff over and then having to rip it up. But if it seems like it's going to be a while before we can get to the underground stuff, then why wait that long? But I do think that the underground stuff is still definitely a priority, for me and for us. So it would just, I guess what Gordon says is there a balancing act between the two? But if it's not going to create a huge headache for city staff and we're not going to have to turn around and rip it up in 6 months or something like that, then let's give the people the roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
Yes, as both the rest of the council has said, it has been it's been a good process, and I think it's been productive for the city. You know, I always thank staff and particularly for doing that and seeing that come about. As we move forward, I believe we discussed in a former meeting that next year there was going to be a kind of I don't say a moratorium, but kind of not do the streets because we were having these other two grants, the trails and the gateway. We're going to take priority. We just want to have so much staff that can do so much. But in the other part is the cost to do this. And I don't disagree with Mr. Gordon about looking at the underground. The money that we had for this, I believe some of the financing came from the sales tax that is expiring and also from the cannabis taxes that, as we all know, Humboldt County's cannabis market as well as the rest of the state has tanked. And so I wouldn't anticipate getting a whole lot of money from cannabis tax going forward. At that, like we did in the past. And we also have this on the ballot and as a reminder that we have this to renew this tax. We lowered the amount that it was from 1% to 0.75%. And that money will have to have its part in fixing our streets and our underground utilities. And so I just want to put in again a plug to any of those that are listening, and hopefully you can pass that on to your friends and neighbors that there is a need to have this utility tax. And I think the council and staff have shown that they have responded responsibly with the tax in the last time that we've had it, that we've used it efficiently, and we've made noticeable improvements in our city. And so hopefully our citizens will move forward and allow us to do more with that tax and continue to redo it. And so, again, thank you to staff and the rest of the council.
Thank you. Are there any questions from public? Is there any hands raised or emails? And I think what we're trying, I think, is just trying to get a consensus of maybe having staff just bring us a plan that we can look at and, you know, address the infrastructure, weigh the difference between the infrastructure and doing these roads prior to the infrastructure getting fixed. I think also there's a grant process that's happening that we're also waiting to find out about. So I think if we can get a consensus on just having the staff at some point bring back a plan to do that, to look at the whole picture, basically, not just roads, not just infrastructure, but look at the whole picture. That would be great. Is there a consensus for that?
Certainly.
Councilmember Carter?
Works for me.
Good. Okay, then that is then what we're asking for staff to do. And as Councilmember Wilson and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson and Councilmember Carter said, I also thank staff for everything you've done. Everything that has been accomplished is just largely in part to, you know, things that the council has done. But staff has really stepped up and gotten things done. And we definitely appreciate what you've done. So, all right, thank you. And so now we come to council reports. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Dorrance. Last week, I went to Crescent City for a last chance grade meeting, and there are 4 different groups, and all 4 were present, along with Caltrans and the consultant. And we actually went out in the field and reviewed the project, stopped at the north end, stood alongside the road and talked about basically which trees would come out if a tunnel is built through the rocks about a mile long, and then a short bridge at the north end. And I want to commend Caltrans on really fine tuning the preliminary design and missing a lot of trees, old growth trees at that north end. That's a huge deal. Also, there are two alternates. Alternate F is a tunnel. Alternate X is a conventional roadway exposed to rain and cut slopes that are exposed to all of nature that nature has to throw at it up there on the north coast. That said, alternate F is going to be moving inland varying amounts up to about 100 feet, and it would necessitate walls, maybe up to 40 feet tall, sometimes walls upon walls, so a double wall in some places. And that, of course, will take trees, and that, of course, will be subject to all of the forces that nature has to throw at it. So there is going to be, we did talk about mitigation also, and ultimately, I think mitigation will settle down to state national parks, sitting down with Caltrans and maybe Save the Redwoods League, and coming up with a plan of, what is the value of trees in a World Heritage Site, old growth redwood trees and other old growth trees. It's not just redwoods. There will be several more meetings to discuss mitigation. Thoughts were thrown out there, such as providing work training for people in Delmar County, which has suffered tremendously in the last 30 years due to just ceasing logging up there. I worked up there in 1980. In Delmar County, there were 8 sawmills. I came back and worked there in 1995, and there were 0 sawmills. And there was a brand new prison. And so the source of money has changed dramatically in Delmar County. The job skills need to be acquired to get current and get up to speed with, a modern world. And there'll be more talk about what is job training going to be part of mitigation, or is it not part of mitigation? And there'll be other things thrown in, but I'm sure that in the future, there'll be 2 or 3 more meetings. They'll have at least 4 study groups together, talk about it, and ultimately then we'll come to some consensus and leave it to Caltrans to carry it out. The one thing that all of us want to do, and that is avoid delays that are caused through litigation. That would be an absolute time killer and potentially a project killer. So, second item that I want to discuss is, we've talked a little bit about it, and that is our Measure O that's going to be voted on in a couple of weeks. And there are signs here at City Hall, vote yes on Measure O, and we're representing to the city, committing to the city that we're going to spend that money on streets, on police, and on economic development. And I encourage council members and anybody here and they're seeing us to come on down to City Hall, pick up a sign or 2, talk to your neighbors about it. And it's really a vital part of the city continuing to move forward on an upward trajectory. Thank you very much, Mayor Don.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Wilson?
Yeah, I've already given a update on the HWAs, which is all I have to really update on. RCA is coming up again. Be interested to hear what comes out of the meeting with PG&E is what we have. But I haven't. Other than that, hopefully the plan is by the next month I'll be retired, so I won't have the work experience that I have. That's plan.
Right. Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. thanks for the heads up on Measure O signs, Council Member Johnson. Will come down and grab one as soon as I'm over my little cough that I have. My only update was to take a stroll down Wildwood Avenue and check out the new kiosks that are up. I'd like to thank specifically Nick Angeloff, but also the rest of the chamber and everybody who, you know, put in effort and time and work to get those up, and would like to encourage any members of the community listening or watching to take a walk and check out some local history and you know, just all that good stuff. So anyway, very exciting. This has been in the works for a while and they're finally up there, and I hope that we, you know, see people milling about and learning about the history of our community. And that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mayor
Oh, yes.
just one thing I had been asked by a member of the community that watches the Zoom or the YouTube public access. They said that they mentioned to some other people that somehow the format with the owls and the sound and the picture part is not the greatest. I don't know if you heard that, but I'll just give you that feedback. So looks good in here, but they said it wasn't working. It was hard to understand this, and somewhat of the picture was kind of confusing. So if someone's able to look at that, they would make it better. They would make that better. But I wanted to mention that for now.
Thank you. And I have nothing to report out. I just want to reiterate what everyone else has said about Measure O. Please vote. You know, don't forget, Measure O is very important to the city. And it reduces it from 1% to 3/4%. So that's a good thing. Anyway, that's all I have. Happy Halloween. Have a good evening, and we will see you maybe on November 1st, maybe on the second week, and the third week in November. Take care, everyone. Meeting is the motion. I got ahead of myself.
So moved.
We have a motion in a second. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.